Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, how are you doing, my love?
Good to see your face.
Yes, so much time, my
I
God.
Oh, I'm sorry you got stuck in traffic.
Ah, thank you, my love. I did it. I made it. How are you doing? So
I'm doing
happy to see
okay.
you.
I'm doing okay. Yeah. I mean, these are crazy times, right?
I know that is why I'm connected with people that I admire, creatives
Oh,
that
yeah.
are all over the world that I'm wondering what they are thinking.
Yes, what are we thinking? That's the big question.
What, right? How we looking at this reality? Did you believe that we are living this?
No,
So crazy.
but in some ways, like, I guess it was bound to happen, something was going to break, something was snapping, and we just didn't know how it was going to happen, right?
I'm so pumped because for me it's a confirmation that the spiritual realm exists. Because if any doubt people had, nature was like, okay, guys, you were talking for a while about climate change, about how fuck up we're doing everything. Okay, let's get it together. Okay, boom, and we are in a, where are we? And I think something changed. I feel like a rotation of the trip. Something in the trip changed the direction.
Yeah, yeah,
And
we're
we
we're in
come
a
to a different place.
parallel dimension, right? That's what it feels like, a parallel dimension.
All of a sudden, the trajectory was kind of twisted.
Yeah.
Tell me, in astrological, first of all, let me introduce you.
Okay.
I would say that you are a wellness friend,
Okay.
a person that I admire, an old friend from New York that I used to visit in Brooklyn, and that I really love what you do because all the blogs that you write. You're a writer. You are an astrologer. You are a multidimensional female voice, and I love that.
Yes, I love that you understand that. I
I
love
can
that you use
see
that term.
myself in you.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
can see you.
I love that. I love
You
to
know,
be
you're an
you
Aries
and I
too.
see you.
You're an Aries too. So I
Yes.
connect with you from a long time ago.
We Aries understand each other. We move in the pack because
That's it,
we're the only
baby. We
ones who
are like,
understand each
boom.
other. Yeah.
It is what it is. How have you been, my love? Tell me.
So, life has been lots of things. I think for me, like everybody else, it's not like it's been just bad or it's been
Of
just
course.
this, right? It runs the spectrum. It's from things that are neutral, where we're just sort of like moving through the day, to things that are like awful. You know that I'm going through a divorce and it's really bad. Not
Sorry
like,
about that.
yeah, it's not like I imagined it would be. It's not like I would hope for it to be. But then in other ways, there's so much empowerment happening, you know,
Possibilities.
possibilities, sense of self, sense of the world, sense of my place in the world, connecting to other people in new and ways that, for all of our advancements, we weren't really thinking about. And now it's become a necessity and an essential. So, I don't want to be Pollyanna about it and only look at the positive. But look, the thing is that shit's always going to be happening. There's always going to be heavy, dark, difficult stuff. That's a
That's what is guaranteed since we were born.
exactly that's a
The
fact
rest
of being
is a
human.
present,
Exactly. So for me,
I
it's almost
believe.
like what is the gift? What is the opportunity? What is the work that we're being asked to do? Are we being given the tools? And so, like, I'm trying to keep myself there as much as I'm dealing with, like, I was saying to a friend, it's like being on the ocean. And there are days when the sea is calm and
Yeah,
you can
Maya.
sit, yeah, and you can just sit and enjoy the lapping of the waves and the sun. And then there are days when it's stormy, man, and you're like,
Mira,
get me off the ship. I don't want to be on the ship anymore.
when I was getting my divorce, I remember I used to talk to my sister, and she told me that I was like, "Hey," one day I would call her, we're like, "Hey, I'm over it. I'm fine. Everything is great. Everything's fine." She was like, "Hey, hold on, hold a second, just 2 more days, and you will see if you are really over or not." And she was
Yeah,
right. It's a
yeah,
process.
It's
especially because it changed awake us all so much.
yeah.
Other perspectives and other realities that were there. We had a clue, but we were not able to process whatever. It was meant to be. You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like we were like this, and now, you know, the vision's been opened up, and it's, you know, potentially a growthful, a good thing, but we got so used to this, right? So
And
yeah.
you don't even want to qualify or whatever, but let me tell you, in the long run, it's a good thing.
I'm already there. If I could put it behind me now, I would, but
So used to other narratives, right?
yes.
Of what is life, what is being a female, that were kind of imposed in the nationalist society.
Yes.
The national model, the identity model, that was there in the education, in the culture, everywhere. And now we are seeing the results of the paradigm of nationalism throughout the modern history.
Yeah. Everywhere.
Aren't we convinced that we are done with modernism for once?
One can only hope, right? One can only hope. I mean, I do see a coming back, right? So the way I think of it, or the way I see it, is that we've gone outside of ourselves so much, right? It's that very Abrahamic tradition that saw the light outside, that saw the wisdom outside, that saw the good above, right? We see that in how capitalism has been structured as well, right? It's like everyone wants to be up here, but the fact is that no one can survive without those of us down here. Nevertheless, we're all enculturated to look up there, look up there, look up there. We've gone so far outside of ourselves that it's tipped the balance. And nature is about balance, right? Yeah. Nature wants to come back into balance. So, I mean, I feel hopeful on one level that people are getting it, beginning to wake up. But the thing is, we've created systems based on that old paradigm. And systems don't give up so easily, right? Because you have stakeholders who benefit, and they're like holding on. They're like got their claws in.
Let me tell you, intellectuals, what are they for? Can you please tell me?
I mean, I think I have lived an anti-intellectual life while respecting intellectuals. So it's this complicated thing where I respect the faculty because that's what makes us human.
Of course.
But it's like, okay, enough, come down off of your high horse, come down from your, you know, pulpit, your pedestal.
Knowledge book, experiential knowledge.
Yes.
I see that paradigm.
Yeah, well, you know,
people think they know by the amount of books they read and by the amount of names they can repeat.
Yes.
It's not about questioning anything that you have read.
Right.
What is the critical thinking?
Your own sort of experience of those things, right? Like you can't this idea of imbibing someone else's ideas, imbibing someone else's philosophy, imbibing the results of someone else's experience of the world without questioning it and running it through your own system, right? Having your own experience of it. But you know, like Eva, you've seen it. That's what's encouraged by the culture. Anything else
you know when I see more than anything in political ads.
Yeah.
Every time I still see those, and the way they are portrayed, I'm like, do we really? Are we in a world that we need this still? You know, what does it mean?
Yeah.
It's about the lies that we happily fabricate together.
Yes. Well, that's a good expression, like the fabrication, right? It's almost like we have to fabricate, or we have fabricated a reality, and that's beginning. The veneer is beginning to rub off, right? It's like we're beginning to see behind that. And we're like, okay, what the was that? It's all BS, right? But for many people, there's no other ground to stand on, so people feel like they're in free fall. Yeah,
it's like I went to a manifestation the other day to support Biden, and I didn't know whether to yell or what. Then I end up saying, "Hi, Harris." I was celebrating Harris, you know, because honestly, the lack of options that we have nowadays, and the fact that the most developed country in the world, the candidates that we have, when it comes to the lack of visibility for the female migrant, other voices.
Oh yeah, yeah.
In a migrant country, are we still in that time of the patriarchal times of the 50s when America was gray again?
Well, who was it great for, right? That's the question.
Exactly.
Even in the 50s. Well, listen, myths die hard. And this country has been regurgitating that same effing myth for how many centuries now, right? To the point
now,
where
the latest is that the communists are the African diaspora.
Yeah.
That's the myth now.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? They recycle all the myths with the same paradigm.
Yeah.
We're still in the 80s, but so everybody that comes out that don't agree with me is a communist.
Yeah. But I know.
Are we back there? I thought we were in the 21st century.
Yeah.
In the technological time.
Well,
in the connectivity time.
So I wonder if that sort of reactivity, right, that returning to that old paradigm is a reaction to the boundaries that are being broken down by the technological era. It's scaring the crap out of people.
Because everybody now we realize that not only some people are intellectuals, not only some people are creative, not only some people are, so the institutions are the perfect place to hide from reality.
Yeah.
And to impose reality, a narrative that has nothing to do with anything, but just the institution.
Right. Fabricated reality. Yes.
And that's for me the modern world, the fantasy.
Yeah.
And the experts are out there.
Yes. Up here, right?
Waiting to visit places to become the next expert on whatever. I'm like, really? And they tell you, the person who lives in the country of subject of study, whatever your life was. And I'm like, really? So that's okay.
Yeah.
That's how my life was. All right. Can I say something?
Right. Your voice doesn't mean anything. Can
I say something about my experience? Am I in the right place?
Yeah.
So I realized lately that I am unemployed so other people can be employed, you know? That's the question, I bet. You know, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's talk about your personal trip because I'm interested for people to know what makes you a creative and what makes you what you are and what you do for a living. And I would like you to introduce yourself. What is it that you do? What is your current practice? And where can they find you, etc.?
Okay, so do you want me to give my name as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, so
and it's there.
Yeah, so my full name is Sheba Remy Kharbanda, but I use Remy. And I was born and raised in London. My family are migrants from the Punjab. Both sides of my family experienced the partition of India, so they were displaced and became refugees. And in the case of my mother's family, became displaced again when they came to the UK in the 1960s. And that, that's where I was born, a decade or so later, and raised there, educated there. And then I came to the US to be with my partner right around 9/11, actually. And I didn't study a creative art. I studied law, and I studied law because I like to understand how things function. And it was a joint degree, actually. It was law and politics. They were pioneering this new program at the University of London, and I did it because I like new stuff. And I'm very glad I did it. I'm glad I didn't study art or an other humanities subject, because for me, it's important to understand how the world functions and, how systems function. Even if I don't really adhere to any of that stuff anymore, it's sort of like, okay, I have a grounding, I have a sense of how the world functions. And it was through work that I was doing with nonprofits in the realm of research, qualitative research to be precise, that I started doing storytelling and recording. Mostly my storytelling has been about recording other people's stories. That's sort of what drives me and what my talent is. I'm very good at, we switch places because usually I'm on that side and I'm talking to the other people. And
I love to do that. I love to do this. I love it.
It's so wonderful. It's so great.
I love it.
But it was.
And I think that I'm talking through you and you're talking through me. It's a mirroring experience. It's great.
Yeah, and that's beautiful when that happens, right? And that happened a lot when I talk to other people. It happens a lot when I talk to other people, you know, that we tend to mirror our experiences, which I think says a lot about the human experience.
Exactly.
Just going back to this idea of experts and the rest of us,
we are here to communicate.
Yes. Yes.
And if you're an expert and you don't communicate, what are you here for?
Yes. 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 And if you're not an expert at communicating, then what kind of an expert are you, and what does it mean?
I'm sorry. You know, I see that what I don't see is an economy of solidarity.
Yeah.
At the experiential level, at the spiritual level. What does it mean to be human?
Yeah. So
people don't know.
I think it's happening, but it's not happening in the centers, right? The centers of power, or the centers of wisdom, or the centers of knowledge. So I work with the idea of the circle a lot, right? And I came to that work from feeling like I'm outside, but realizing that no, I'm only outside based on where this culture perceives the circle to be and the center to be. The truth is, the circle is much wider, and what's happened is the light is being shone on this illusory center. But the fact is, the rest of us are still doing what we're doing, and we are innately connecting in the ways that you're talking about. We are innately sharing, we are innately collaborating, but that's not what is sanctioned by the center, right? So what we're talking about is decentralizing and taking focus away from the center. Yeah. And for me, that's where the issue is, right? Power is deemed to exist at the center. And you and I understand that that's not true. It's how we are conceiving of power that sees power at the center. But the truth is that we all are agents of it, right?
The sad part for me is how many people subscribe acritically to an idea of a center of power where all knowledge, all institutions, everything emanates, and nothing else is important, when we know the way things work, the way power works.
Right.
You know, it's not all about power, because I've seen some people that are only interested in being an elite of whatever, elite. No. What about how we can serve other people that are in need?
Yeah.
That's my question. And I'm sorry, I'm repeating this question every day now, because I don't see the service part. Yeah. And I have to see it, because we need to help each other.
Yeah.
We cannot forget about each other just like that.
No.
And you know how many Cuban friends here forget that they have African roots?
Yeah.
Because it's supposedly politically correct to be white. What is that?
Yeah. And I do see things through the lens of power, but not the way that this culture has perceived power. Or they shed their African roots because it's deemed to weaken their power.
Crazy. Because there's a perception that the Africanness in you is not a treasure, it's a curse.
Exactly. And this is what I mean about decentralizing and sort of constructing our notions of what is worthy, what is powerful, what is what is necessary, what is wisdom, what is knowledge. You know, I talk about it in terms of feminine and masculine, which I know these get very overused, these terms, but if we think of them as different faculties and representing different parts of the brain.
Yin and yang. Yin and yang.
Yeah.
Balance of both. Recognize that we are not totally absolutely good or absolutely bad.
Exactly. Or just light, right? Or just dark. It's a mixture where it's this kind of interplay, this dialogue that's happening. Going back to you talking about communication, it's this conversation, the communication that's happening, right? We move from day into night, night into day. The oceans, the tide goes out, then the tide comes in. Like it's part of a natural rhythm and a natural cycle. And of course, as we started the conversation, we are out of balance. We're completely out of balance. So
we forgot who we are.
Yeah, totally forgot who we are. And in some ways, you know, I play with this idea, and then it makes me angry. And then I'm like, okay, I need to get over that. We have been made to forget who we are. We have been made. It's become.
That's what the predominant or dominant narratives are.
Yes,
and everything is about narratives.
Yes, it is all about narratives.
Budgetary speaking, which percentage of the department get the better percentage in every company?
Yeah.
Marketing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what power is, baby.
And
It's not
also,
about the content, it's about how to sell
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And
And
in that exercise, we forget what is it that you are selling.
right. And going back to that whole dynamic of a conversation, who's dominating the conversation? You know, where is the communication being prioritized? Yeah, we see this. I think more people than not have their eyes wide open, but there's that sense of might means right. Like we see this, we've seen this coming from colonized, you know, being colonized peoples, survivors of imperialism, colonialism. We understand intimately that in the eyes of the sort of dominant culture, and the tool of oppressive culture is that might equals right. Whoever wields the most power, like forceful power, is right, just by virtue.
No matter what they call.
Yes.
And
so there's
relationships are in the way of.
Yeah. So there's that sense always of like, well, we know this stuff is true, but we don't feel like we have the right, or we don't feel empowered. And then even when people like us understand the problem, we are denied access to the resources to make it happen.
Oh my God, because you know too much. You are not supposed to know too much.
Yes.
I discovered that there are no spaces.
Yeah.
The spaces for people like us needs to be created. We are the creators.
Exactly.
And that is when I refer to creative, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. People who have to create their own path.
Yes.
Monetary speaking, in all kind of manifestations, because they are not places for people like us.
Right.
In this world.
Yeah.
You know, I'm being inspired by, you know, it's a thinker. His name is Baba. Homi Baba.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
I named my blog Cualidad in Between because of him, because of this idea that honestly is a critic to modernism, that not either in the right or left, white or black or whatever, is where lies the challenges, because most of the people are in between these main extremist narratives of representation that don't represent anything. Yeah. And there, in the in-between spaces where everything is what you were saying, you know, it's kind of, everything is really bubbling.
Yes. It's that liminal
alternative centers of powers, you know. There are many ways, ancestral ways to do things that we have avoided completely, thinking that we know better.
Not just avoided, they've been repressed. Like, think about whose land we're living on, right? And speaking of ancestry and ancestral practices, you know as well that a lot of those practices were banned. They were made illegal and illegitimate. Like when you do that, it's not just you're just not teaching. It's not just that you're actively sort of
delegitimizing.
This is an active repression that's happened on these lands. That does something to the collective psyche. You know, it creates a trauma, and not just in the people whose traditions are being repressed, in everybody, because it's sending a message, right, of what is legitimate and what isn't. And it's being backed up by force, and it's being backed up by human law.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
It has to do with what we teach at schools, who is considered professional.
Right.
Whose looks are prioritized.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that.
Yeah.
It goes to all those places.
Yeah. Who's considered an authority, whose history is taught, what is considered legitimate. Yeah, all of that. And in ways, you know, I don't know if you've ever thought about this. I have. I think about it all the time, about how we ended up in this country in this moment, right? Because
there's a reason for that, and I can see it. I can feel it.
You know, we are lucky.
I suspect it. Yes.
We have a grounding in our heritage.
Oh my God.
You know, we have deep grounding.
We know who we are.
We know who we are. We know where we've come from. We know where our people came from. We know what's beyond this, right? And so, you know, my mentor talks about it, and she's a Polish immigrant, you know, she still speaks with an accent, and even though she's white, she still sees herself as outside of this society. And I see how she's treated like she's outside, right? You know, we might deem her to have a certain privilege, but there is a ceiling, right, for certain people.
You have to pay a price. You have to pay a price.
Huge price. And, you know, she often talks about that we all ended up here for a reason. And it's uncomfortable, not just for us, but it's uncomfortable for society. And that's why we get a lot of pushback. And that's why we get a lot of, like, we're reminded at every turn where we belong. You know what I mean? Like, get back in your box.
Get back in your box. And it's made by so many interesting methods, from silence to invisibility to just being an audience, being invited as audience everywhere, but that's it. Yeah. You know, and you're like, am I the perfect audience? You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm an actor. I have been an actor all my life. How come I'm not seen as an actor here?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know anybody that has a PhD that is trying to make an entrepreneurial effort.
Right.
And that doesn't mean anything, you know?
Yeah.
It means eventually, you know, I have to make it valuable.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, that's the thing. We are being
tested.
Yeah, we have to write the script. We have to rewrite the narrative. You know,
it's
and
so interesting.
There's no there's nothing there's no precedent for this, right?
Pioneers, my love. Pioneers in a way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's our, I mean, we're Aries, right? So
no doubt. No doubt.
Incarnated for, you know.
So let's continue with your story.
Yeah, so
we have never stopped talking about it, but let's continue.
So it was through my sort of qualitative research that I entered creative work, because I soon started to incorporate video. And I think it was really around the time that a friend of mine died. He was one of my dearest, you know, I call him the love of my life. He was Cuban. I spent a lot of time with him in Cuba. He was the one that made Havana for me a home. And, you know, I've always been intuitive. I've always had the skills of a medium since I was a child. It was when he passed away that there was a quickening that happened. It was sort of like my spirit said, okay, you need to, this is not a hobby or, you know, whatever, anymore. You need to really make it central to your life. And that's sort of when I began to embrace more consciously and willingly the fact that, you know, a creative life is the only way to live, basically.
The only, no other choice.
No, and so
thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
So, you know, I've told you I've been telling other people's stories, and slowly and steadily I started to use the medium of video to tell my own story, but not in a linear way. You know, I very much appreciate what you were talking about before, that space of the liminal. You know, you called it the in-between. For me, it's the liminal space. Yeah. In the liminal space, it's very hard to attach to finite anything. So
I love it. I've always lived in liminal spaces all my life, any place in the world.
So that's been a lot of what my work is about. It's about either capturing that in a way that feels accessible to people, or it feels like they're sharing a little bit of my liminal space, or journeying with people in that liminal space, which is what I do with my metaphysics practice, right? So when I read for people, whether it's tarot or astrology, I'm not doing predictive work. I'm not giving them fixed outcomes. I'm taking them into the liminal space to explore and to kind of find their own messages, symbols, whatever may be there for them. And it's
how long have you been doing this practice?
So my metaphysics practice, you know, like I said, I've been an intuitive since I was a child, and I would do things in a very ad hoc way since I was a teenager. But I would say in earnest since Harold died in 2006. And I've been reading charts more sort of dedicatedly since 2010. Tarot I've been doing for 20 years, and energy work I've been doing for about 15 years. Yeah.
I'm getting a call, you know, I'm getting a call. I feel it.
Yeah, good.
I feel it lately. It's been slow but steady, persistent. So I think I'm heading there.
Yeah.
Something like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's innate. I don't feel like I'm
listening to astrology like
all the time.
almost every day, nonstop, and I feel my healing happening by doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
See, because in astrology, I want to talk to you about the power and the importance of astrology. The other day, I read a shitty article that they were comparing how the New Ages and Nazis share the same kind of, beliefs in the importance of astrology, the ancestral knowledge, whatever. So these are kind of really reductionist comparisons if you think about it.
Yeah.
But I want to hear your take about why astrology is so important.
So, many people have different approaches to astrology. For me, it's an art form and a language. It's a way to understand, going back to me needing to understand how things function and how things are structured. It's a way to understand, our relationship to the world. It's a way to organize our experience, right? Because there's so many potentials, and depending on where you want to take it, so many ways to understand quite fundamentally why we incarnated in the moment that we incarnated. So for some people, it's enough to say that it was haphazard, that it was random and it was an accident. That doesn't work for me. That is not my experience. That is not how I understand the world.
Okay.
We are connected. We are stardust. We came, we descended from the stars. Why did we descend in this moment? What is it we came to do? And I feel like astrology, if it's used properly, can really help us understand that. And like I said, I don't use it in a predictive and a deterministic way. I used it more in a soulful, or you could say a psychological way, to understand the self and understand the self in relationship to the environment, to the world, to each other.
But if you think about it, there's a convergence of what we call today multidisciplinary thinking.
Yeah.
Which is you find in astrology naturally, in which you have math, you have geometry, you have all kind of sciences.
Yes.
Together with all kind of humanities.
Yes.
Storytelling, psychology, literature, myth, philosophy, everything.
Yes, it's very sophisticated. It has roots, deep, deep roots. Those who want to write it off are really not doing justice to themselves or the practice and the traditions, because it has deep, deep, deep roots. And the other beautiful thing about it is you can see how it's adapted along with how humans have adapted, right? For me, it's an expression of consciousness. So, we have the understanding of these outer planets now. We did not have those 100 years ago, with all of them at least. So for example, Pluto, which is a big actor right now, a big player on the astrological scene. We didn't have a sense of Pluto, 100 plus years ago. It's because we have evolved. It's because humanity has evolved, because of consciousness has evolved, that we can understand what the mechanisms of this planet might represent to us as human beings, and I think that's where the power is, in understanding this is it's a tool it's dynamic. It's not a static. You can use it statically. There are some very wonderful predictive astrologers out there, but you also don't have to use it that way, and you can still get an enormous amount out of it. That also just goes beyond like the limits of sun sign astrology, right? Which
I know.
It can be fun, but it's...
And on the same line, I'm thinking about, the ancestral times. I've been obsessed lately with Egypt. It's coming back since the pandemic.
Yeah.
I've been thinking how little favor we do to the Egyptian culture in our lives and in our, everything. Yes. Because honestly, I think that the Western society is all based on Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
And we call Greek and Rome the classics.
Yes.
When what they did was just went to Egypt.
Yes.
Just because, why? Because it's in Africa. We don't want to call it that's a classic. Really? Is that simple of a representation?
The bias runs deep. That mentality, right? So this is the interesting thing about Western scientific materialism, because there's the veneer of it being objective. There's the veneer of it being right. But then you start scratching the surface and you realize, listen, unfortunately, humans are innately subjective. We are not objective beings. If we were, the lens would be so wide, and we would have room for so many other faculties, you know, so other than the intellect, as we've been talking about. Yeah, it's a very, and going back to the intellect, in Vedanta, which is like the roots of Hindu thought, the mind is considered to be cutting, right? It has a cutting, it's a cutting element. It works to cut and divide, and you need that for some things. But you also need this to unite and bring together the different pieces, and also understand the way that the different pieces are connected. Otherwise, you're just cutting. And you can see all the different parts, but you don't understand the ways that everything is connected together. And I think this is a lot of what's happened in what we understand as Western culture, right? It's the cutting without an awareness of how all the pieces.
Labeling as a way of living, as a way of thinking, as a way of operating.
Yeah.
Not everything can be labeled and put as a file or a folder.
Right. And this kind of blind pursuit of development at the risk of the environment, right? Which, I mean, how did such a sophisticated culture bring us to the brink?
I know. And at the cost of some people being fine, and people that are not fine pretending that they're fine just because some people are fine.
Yes. Or just accepting that collateral damage like that is a necessity. The fact that
like, unfortunately, a friend of mine also, he always tell me, why don't you accept reality? I'm like, because that's not reality.
No, that's the accepted version of reality.
That's not reality for me. I am sure that that's not my reality. And I'm not here in this world to be whatever you think I should be because I am Cuban and I have an accent and whatever.
Yeah.
You know? No, I'm an entrepreneur, you know? Yeah. That's who I am. Yeah. I'm an author and I'm whatever I say I am.
You are, exactly.
Because we define ourselves.
We
are so used to other people and other circumstances external to ourselves. Yes. Define who we are.
Yes.
What we should do in life, and we should conform to that. What a violence implying all this system, cultural system.
It is a violence. But then look at how our cultures have sustained themselves, and look how this culture sustains itself. It is through violence, and they're not even trying to hoodwink us. It's not even secret violence. It's in your face violence.
In your face. That's what I see. This time it's in my face.
Yeah.
And you can see in the reconfiguration of forces, kind of. We study international relations, you know, reconfiguration of forces. You can see clearly how is that happening as we speak.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. It's natural. For me, it's the divine order that we deny so much.
Yes.
In all our classrooms.
Yes.
We're so happy that we have historic materialism to interpret reality.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. It was not enough. It's as you said.
Yeah.
These patriarchal systems of men-based knowledge. No, we are changing to feminine energy.
Yeah.
We need it collectively, don't you think?
Yes. And I just want to sort of, not just male-based, but masculinity-based, because also the other thing, right? Beyond third wave feminism. So we go by classic neoliberal.
Yeah, that's true.
If we look at feminism through that lens, it was all about just aping masculine structures, patriarchal structures. It wasn't actually about
the man. Exactly.
You know, it wasn't actually about valuing the feminine. We still don't, outside of third wave feminism, of course, right? Which is being pioneered by women of color and women at the margins who are like, wait a second, we don't want to just we don't want a seat at your table. We want to create our own table.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's another problem. Black female voices, or whatever is considered black here, which is a lot.
Right.
You know, have a voice in the table as equal, not as product.
Right. Or as a token. Yeah. You can.
I am discovering,
but don't open your mouth.
I have been discovering the world. I came from La La Land, Cuba, kind of La La Land. If you think about it, was another version of that reality, that modernity. Tropical whatever socialism, whatever that was.
Right, right. And now you're in the belly of the beast.
I'm like, okay, where I want to see next now. Hawaii. It has to be Hawaii. I'm ready to retire already, you know. I have seen too much. You know, I see too much to the point that sometimes I see people, and the moment that I see them, I just know who they are. You know?
Yeah.
It's so weird, right? And I don't believe. And now I'm because of this conversation that I'm having with you, it's just a confirmation that, you know, we are who we are. We are the universe. We are one.
Yeah. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
I've been also meditating a lot and connecting with Buddhism in my own way, you know, because I see that regardless, we have been all explorers of knowledge and, you know, throughout our different lives. And that is why we connect.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, we are by nature seekers. You know?
Tell me a little bit about, tell me what was being from India, for what has that mean in your life?
For me, that's like the biggest gift. So my grandfather made the decision when my mother was quite young to, you know, uproot the family and bring them to England. And I feel like my mother has been very philosophical about that, you know, for her, that was ultimately a good move because she is a Londoner. My mother is one of these people. It's been 58 years. She still lives in, you know, the same part of London, West London. She raised us as Londoners. We thrived in London. I credit who I am with being a Londoner. But there's always that feeling of being, you know, out at sea. And there's always that feeling of like being uprooted from the original home. Okay. And so I was very lucky in that my mother would take us back to India as often as she could. And my dad was always living there. So there was always, you know, that was always a possibility. As I got older, that relationship became even harder to sort of navigate because these are very different cultures.
Very different ones. Bad.
Yeah, and my in-laws are white Southern, you know, they are the veiled kinds of white supremacists, not the ones who, you know, say all the shit, but their culture is that. And it became really challenging for me to be rooted in who I am. Right. And so that relationship became really difficult. But it was as I got older, after Haddle died, that I was like, okay, I need to choose. I need to like really actively make a choice about who I am and what is informing me.
Yeah.
And, you know, my heritage, my culture, it's the ground I walk on, it's the water I drink, it's the food I eat, it's the whole thing. And I don't just consider, obviously, yes, there's a nation state of India, but for me, it's the entire region. Why? Because until very, very recently, there were no borders.
Exactly.
And my own family's history involves crossing those borders many, many times.
Exactly.
And, you know, living as a sort of a part of a more united context. And so I feel very connected to the entire region.
These ideas of nation are totally modern. They were not always there, and hopefully one day they will not always be. Yeah. Not only we are subject of all that violence that accompany all those nation constructions.
Yeah. Because they're not natural, they were imposed, right?
Totally.
That's why there was all the violence. That's why there's been so much bloodshed. That's why the borders are like wrought with blood. It's because they were imposed for much of the world. It's not a natural outcome. Yes, there is an aspect of us that's tribal for sure, but this idea of these borders and these enforced sort of like separations, it's a violence. It's a violence on the body and the mind. And
who you are means according to the place that you live in. It's a different thing, you know, completely. Because not because who you are, but because how other people see or don't see you.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I am who I am since I was born.
Yeah.
And I'm always gonna be that.
You know,
wherever I am.
Right. And it's really not straightforward for you as an Afro-Cuban because your roots are in like they cross seas.
Thank God they're multidimensional. You know,
Yes.
I did ancestry, you know, this thing of the DNA that it gives you a breakdown of nationalities where you were, you know, ancestry, I mean, your DNA tells where you come from. And I did for me and my son. And my whole point was that I wanted to demonstrate him that we're citizens of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the case because we have blood from so many different nationalities.
Yeah.
So when we say we are Cuban, we are this, that, no, 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 no. We are citizens of the world. We are Africans, we are Asians, we are Caribbeans, we are, you know, Americans in the wider sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't know that. You know, me, I try to talk with people about the African diaspora that is, and even like today we have these problems, right? That I am totally understand, and I have embraced even my Africanness now because of an act of solidarity, and I understand what is going on. But I tell my brothers and sisters, I tell them, listen, the African question is not a U.S. question.
Right.
Only.
Yeah.
It comes from, you know, West India, you know, in Brazil, many places have similar realities.
Yeah.
So you cannot think that it's only people who are African American that speak English. English is a language that, by the way, is from the colonial time.
Correct.
It's not your own language.
Right.
So,
yeah.
You know, we are talking in the language of the colonizers.
Yes. Yeah. And using the colonizers' tools to understand who we are as well, right?
In which, in most cases, there's no space for that, such a thing.
No. Those boxes, right, that were created, we would never self-choose them. They don't make sense. They only serve to create more division. Yeah.
And me also, I'm realizing the unfortunate damage that the religion, Catholic religion, made for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
These missionaries that change every culture, every language, every piece of anything other than what the colonizer want these people to be.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Through education, that's what we call education.
Right. But then we also come back to force, right? Because I don't think there's a single example where that missionary work was done without some kind of backing.
Absolutely.
From forceful backing. It wasn't just
Absolutely.
good marketing, right? It wasn't just effective marketing. It was done through force. It was done at the, the end of a barrel of the gun. So
gentrification of the mind.
Yeah.
101.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, tell me, how do you see moving forward? How do you see what strategies, let's say, and what strategies we as human beings can use to navigate this time in your experience?
Now, going back to what you asked me, what my culture gave me, one of the beautiful things about, you could say, subcontinental culture, which is not different from other cultures, but this is my understanding of it, is that rooted deeply in it is this idea of unity consciousness, right? It's that idea that we are all connected, good or bad, right? That like Trump is a mirror as much as we don't like him.
That's my point too. And some people got offended when I say that. I'm like, yes, you have to see the Trump that we all have.
Yeah. And so I feel like we are being called to go back into that space, to remember just how connected we are. And I say that while also recognizing that I'm going through this horrible personal experience where I don't feel at one with these people at all. I feel like they're my enemies. And that's really challenging because, I'm sort of locked in this dynamic with them. But I feel like it's getting back into heart-centered work. It's getting back into spaces of connection rather than disconnection, collaboration rather than competition, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be huge and dramatic and large scale. It can be small scale. It can be conversations like we're having now.
Yeah.
Mutual.
Everything starts by a conversation.
Yeah, yeah. All the mutual aid we're seeing, right? Across the country, across the world. I mean, that's so indicative of where we're being taken, of how resilient we can be and how creative we can be, going back to the faculty of creativity. And also, just like you were saying, and I believe too, we just have to speak our truth. We just have to share. We have to air our voice. We can't buy into this idea that only the voice of the few is important, that only these voices have validity. It doesn't matter. We all have something.
Or if you are discreet, politically correct, is when you are good as a woman, for example.
Interesting.
Haven't you seen that kind of model of gender, of femininity, which is based on hiding everything that you really are, who you feel, what you really feel, and just pretending to be this thing that is expected from society?
Yes, and maybe the way I see it is sort of the like neoliberal feminism, right? Which has repressed the femininity.
Totally. It's a masculine model.
Yeah.
Of behavior.
Yeah. In that sense, I completely relate. And you were talking earlier about how certain ways of being are sidelined or ignored. And I wanted to add also repressed. And this is something that I've experienced, right? Because I practice these arts that are very sort of fringe, right? I'm an intuitive, a medium, a psychic, whatever words you want to use. And in many circles, I've been flat out ridiculed.
I know. You're a witch.
Yeah. Well,
people know because we consume documentaries and we know how history is. So the voodoo, oh, that's bad. Oh, because why? Have you read anything about it? No, I just saw a documentary or a picture and that's it. That's all I need to know.
Or buying into the scientific materialist outlook, which says that only what I can touch is real, right? As if the ability to shift between dimensions, the ability to see beyond the physical is somehow not real or not normal or whatever, fill in the blank, qualification you want to put in there for it. But there's a lot of that too, right? People who think they're critical thinkers but don't question the paradigms.
The only truth that I know now is that vibration, the music is my reality. It's the reality.
Yeah.
That's the only truth that I know.
Yeah.
Because I see such a truth in music, because it's beyond where any narrative that any lies that we can talk to ourselves, whatever.
Yes.
We all connect with it beyond who we think we are.
Right. And many cosmologies are based on the idea that we emerged from sound.
I believe so. I didn't know that, but I believe so. Totally.
As you said, it cuts through the shit.
That's it.
It cuts through all the crap. We become whatever, however you want to describe it, right? We return
universal, I would call it.
We become united within ourselves. Whatever it is, something happens that's very deep that takes us beyond this dimension, right? And we are awakened undeniably and unquestioningly to the fact that we don't just occupy this dimension, right? That we are fed by something else.
So good to talk to you, my dear.
You too.
As always. I'm so happy that I had this instinct to connect with you. I love it.
It happened.
I wish you the best. And
Thank you.
I didn't ask you, do you need any help with anything?
No, my love. Thank you. Just
send
me good energy.
All right. Anything, please. Okay?
I will. Just send me strength.
You're not alone, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. Likewise, sister.
I see you. Okay? Chao, cuídate.
Bye, darling.
Bye. Besitos.